Well, hi there. Welcome. Welcome to the first webinar for Caregiver School. My name is Pat Thorne, and if you don't know me, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been a social worker for about 20 years. I started off working in hospice, counseling families at end-of-life care. Worked help with oncology patients, working, counseling people going through our cancer journey, and also did some counseling for residents of nursing homes. So I've been helping families and family caregivers for, gosh, over 20 years. And in my private practice, I continue to work with family caregivers. I also do caregiver coaching. I teach at seminars and I present at conferences. But the biggest thing, one of the things I did do was I created Caregiver School, which is an online training program for family caregivers. Because I found when I was working with caregivers in hospice, there was just a lot of stuff they don't know that professional caregivers know. So I created a caregiver program, Caregiver School, that walks you through the entire caregiving journey, from becoming a caregiver all the way through to the journey's end and grief and saying goodbye. This series of webinars is sort of the in-person classroom, and the caregiver program's like the textbook. So the detailed information is in the caregiver program. And today we're just going to talk about generally, well, what does that mean and how does that apply to you? So the first thing we need to do is learn how to get you connected to the Caregiver School. So first, a disclaimer: not a doctor, not a lawyer, not a financial advisor. So I'm just giving you general information so that you can, be informed and then know what questions to ask those subject matter experts. So let me begin by, again, please be patient. I'm learning how to do all this stuff. So let's learn about Caregiver School. So Caregiver School is a website and a podcast. So let me, okay. So it's an audio training program that's free for family caregivers, and you can access it two ways: through either the Caregiver School website or as a podcast. So let me show you how to find the website. So it is caregivers, plural, school, caregiversschool.com, and that will take you to this page. Okay. And I don't think it works here. No, I got to go over here. And then you want to come up here to student page. And there we go. Oh, up, up, up. Uh-oh. There we go. And this is the student page. So this is where you'll find all of the lessons for Caregiver School. Is it all right? And so you could see here, you can click on the lesson. Oops, sorry. Are you one of the 40 million? If you're listening to this, then you probably are. 40 million is the estimate. You can, that's how you listen to it. And this tells you how long each section is. So this is 6 minutes and 20 seconds. And then here is where you would click to download any of the print materials or the worksheets. Okay. So from the website, this is the easiest way to get all of the worksheets and that go with the lessons. And you can listen from the website, but it's easier to listen through the podcast. I'm going to show you how to do that. But you want to go to this place first and print out the worksheets. And the first thing I want you to do is print out this course outline, and you'll see it has all of the different lessons. And then this number next to it, this Sorry, I've got to go back and forth. This shows you what worksheet. And so this next page is the list of worksheets, and the number coincides with the lesson up here. So we're going to talk about this, the 4 journeys of a caregiver is worksheet number 2. And so you come down here and print. All right. So this is just something you'll want to print and have, because, caregivers are at different stages of the journey, and you might need to know something now that, you don't have to go through the program in order. You can if you've got time, but sometimes people just need to go to whatever they think they need at the moment. So it's organized to walk you through a journey, but each lesson is individual, and that you could just listen to it and get the information you need from that particular lesson. All right. Sometimes if it's important that you need some background information, in the audio, I'll reference that to say, hey, make sure you listen to this so that you understand what I'm talking about in this one. Okay. So that is Caregiver School on the website. All right. And let me stop that. Here we go. Thanks for being patient while I figure out how to do this. All right. So then the other way to listen is through the podcast. This is the better way to listen to Caregiver School. So it's a podcast. So if you're not familiar, I'm just going to assume I was a kindergarten teacher, so I always assume you don't know you don't know anything. And so on your phone, like this is my phone, you'll see there's a podcast. If you don't know how to access a podcast, there's an app for podcasts. Okay. So you go into the podcast app. My phone came with that automatically downloaded, but and then what you want to do is you want to search in the podcast, and you want to search for Caregiver School, singular. It's a little confusing, but for Caregiver School. And it will bring up this. And you'll know you're in the right place because it's the cover of my book, and it's Caregiver School. And then you can just listen to all the lessons. So this is. Are you one of the 40 million? Same thing. We just listened to this, and you probably are. It's 40. It's just difficult. There is a way to print the worksheets from here, but you've got to go into episode notes. You've got to go into or the link to the website. Every podcast app is different. That's why I'm saying go to the website to print the worksheets, but it's easiest to listen here because then you could download it easier. Okay. So that's the podcast app. There is a podcast website, but I would say either go to my website, caregiverschool.com. Remember, it's plural. And don't even ask, that was a whole domain name thing. I'm learning this technical stuff, but Caregiver School is the podcast. All right. So anybody have any questions about that so far? Anything that clear? All right. Well, so for today, we're going to start with becoming a caregiver. And so how does that start? So, the caregiving journey is not the same for everyone. I mean, we're caring for different people. We're caring for people for different reasons. We're caring for people in different circumstances. So the first part of the caregiving journey is, who are you caring for? Now, many people are caring for themselves. They're kind of putting these steps in order. I live alone. I'm getting older, or I want to make sure I'm putting the things in place that I could take care of myself, and that's wonderful. And then there are people that have, are taking care of a spouse or someone they live with, and that's different when you're in the same environment. But some of you are taking care of a parent or a loved one that lives separately, whether they live in their own home, or they live in an assisted living, or they live in a nursing home. But again, different if they're just down the hall, versus across town. And then some people are doing long distance caregiving. You're really far away. Someone is 2 or 3 hours away. So it's you begin the journey by like, who am I caring for? And then why? Why are you caring for someone? And here's where I talk about the 4 different journeys. So let's come back to Caregiver School here. I'm going to close this and we're going to come back to, and you can listen to this lesson, but let's look at this worksheet, the 4 journeys. They're generally we're caring for someone 4 different ways, and each way is very, very different. So the first I call is just old age. We're just getting older, and as people age, our abilities and we become more dependent. We have issues with hearing or vision or just being able to take care of ourselves. So there's just old age, okay? Then the next journey would be if someone you're caring for has a physical disability, all right? So a physical disability or disease. So you're caring for someone that's got congestive heart failure or COPD, or maybe has cancer or back problems, or some sort of a macular degeneration, and they're losing their sight or their hearing. So that's a different journey than taking care of, my mom was 92 and was perfectly healthy and lived alone and lived independently until she developed a disease process and she needed more care and couldn't live independently. So it's important that changes the journey and changes what you need to do. And then there are people who have these first 2 categories, these first 2 journeys. You're generally working with someone who is very cognizant. They're very involved in their care. They know what's going on. They're able to be an active part of their caregiving. They just need some maybe physical help or just daily caregiving. But these next 2 journeys involve some level of cognitive disability where the person we're caring for may not be able to make good choices or understand some of the decisions. Now, sometimes there are disease processes, and that's what 3rd journey, from disease to dementia. So let me back up and tell you, dementia is an umbrella term. It's a broad term. It's like saying cancer, and there's breast cancer and lung cancer and colon cancer. There's different kinds of cancer. Dementia is when it's a dysfunction of brain functioning. So when our memory is severely impaired, or judgment, our reasoning ability, that's a dementia. Now, there are lots of causes of dementia. So people equate dementia with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is just one form. It's a disease that causes dementia. Okay. But there are other illnesses that start off as a disease process, but then affect the brain and affect brain functioning. Parkinson's is a great example. That starts off as physical disability with tremors and physical limitations, and eventually impairs a person's ability to speak and think and reason and answer questions. So that journey would be, you're starting off with a disease process. Maybe someone has cancer, and then it metastasizes to the brain, and now we have a dementia and a cognitive impairment. And then the 4th journey is when we're starting right out from a dementia, which is generally you think of Alzheimer's, someone with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, where they're physically very healthy and functioning, but they don't know what day it is or what's what. Okay. So it's important to understand the journey because understanding the journey, the path that you're on, helps you figure out what kind of planning you need to do. So someone who is just getting older, you might have a little time to put sort of all your ducks in a row and have conversations and put things in place. And where someone who suddenly gets a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, the priority may change a little bit because we may have to get a few things in place while that person is able to participate in their care and make some decisions. Okay, so that's the 4 journeys. So the first step is, who are you caring for? And then what kind of journey are you on? And then the next thing we're going to talk about is know your role. So again, we're going to come back over here to Caregiver School. I'm going to close out the journeys, and we're going to come down here to, well, where did it go? I think it's in here. Nope. Well, I will have to find that. I will let back. It's not obvious where that is. Hold on. Three and 4. Hmm. Well, what do you know? It's not clearly labeled. It must be connected to one of those other. I'm sorry about that. Well, it'll look like this. And I will make sure I clarify that on the website and separate it out as a separate thing under that becoming a caregiver. I will add that to, that's my list of things to do. But for those of you on the call, I'll email this to you. But the 3 roles are overseer, middleman, and caretaker. Now, an overseer is someone that's just the person you're caring for is really taking care of themselves, and you're just like the spotter at the gymnastics event, like in case there's a fall, in case there's something that you need. I was an overseer for my mom for years. I would just go with her to doctor's appointments to make sure she understood everything, and helped her with whatever she needed. But mostly she was in charge, and I stepped in and helped with just little things. My sister lived nearby and would help her with moving furniture around. But just an overseer is just there, just making sure everything is okay. A middleman is when you get a little bit more involved. When my mom wasn't able to do her grocery shopping and she needed a little bit more care, that's a middleman, when you're taking on more of a role. And again, as depending on your journey, depending on what the ability and the disease process of the person you're caring for, someone with Alzheimer's, you're going to step in and take over some maybe some financial and legal issues right away, but they can take care of themselves, and their physical care, it's not needed as much. Okay. So that's the middleman. And then the caretaker is the full-time, when you become the full-time caretaker, the full-time caregiver. They have full responsibilities for their loved one, and the primary decision maker. So you know who you're caring for, you know what kind of journey that you're on, and your role will change over time. I mean, you might start out as a full-time caregiver, caretaker, but that's kind of usually in a crisis. Usually you evolve into a role over time. All right. And so now that you're a caregiver, then what do you need to do? So now we're going to talk about I labeled this the 6 essential steps, which kind of leads you to think that it's something you should do in order. And really it's tasks. It's really 6 things that caregivers need to do. So this is the 6 essential steps. Okay. And again, here I summarize the roles: overseer, middleman. So the first step is know your role and why that's so important. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this not sharing? I'll figure this by my next webinar, I'll figure out all this other stuff. My goodness. Okay, so where I went, how I got here is I was on this student page and I went to 6 essential steps and I downloaded the worksheet and it opens it up in another window. And then you can print it from up here. Okay. So um, so the 6, and again, I said it's steps, it's more tasks. So again, we're going to start with just know your role and why this is important. It's really important to stay in your lane, especially if you're the caregiver to someone who is in those first 2 journeys where they are, fully functioning and cognizant, and you don't want to overstep your boundary, because that's mom, I think you should do this, or mom, I like, mind your own business and leave me alone. And so understanding that if you're just the overseer, you're just, again, off to the side, but ready to step in. And the middleman is always an awkward role to play, because especially if you're dealing with someone who has any awareness or desire to be, be involved in the decision making. And so it, I have a whole section on, conflicts with families about, my, as a caregiver, your job, your focus, your expectation is to keep someone safe, eh, and alive and healthy. And but the cared for, their goal is to remain independent and autonomous. And sometimes those conflict of like, mom, I don't think you should live alone anymore. I'm not leaving but they don't want to leave their home, or I don't want to leave. I have a caregiver I'm working with. They're all set to move into an independent facility, which is really where they need to be. They need to be in sort of a facility where there's a little bit more care, but they're just not really ready to give up their home and live in just an apartment, and lose some of that independence and autonomy. So just remember that your role is can be really tricky until you're a full caretaker, and it's known and it's obvious that you're making all the decisions. When you've got to work with either the person you're caring for, but also it can get tricky with siblings and other people that might be involved. But that's lessons for a whole other day. But for tonight, we're talking about these 6 steps. So first is know your role. And the next is to evaluate your situation. And this really comes down to if you know the journey that you're on, where is that person on that journey? So if you understand what if it's just old age, you understand, okay, well, they're able to do this or they're able to do that. And it just helps. You just have to see where they are on that trajectory. If they have I'm working with a family who mom has congestive heart failure. And now it's really moving in. She's had it for a long time and she's been dealing with it. It's been a chronic situation. And now it's getting a little bit more, we're moving into another phase. The normal phase of she's getting a little weaker, she's a little bit more unstable, and now they're going to have to do, take those next steps. And so after you evaluate the situation, you make a plan. And again, about how you're going to do this, who's going to do that, how are you going to pay for it, who's going to be involved, where is this all going to happen? And then another step, and this is where we're really going to, so each of these webinars, we're going to go through each of these. And so our next webinar will be, we're going to start this step, which is gather information. If you're a caregiver, there's just a ton of like insurance papers, medical papers, appointments, specialists. They're always asking you for any kind of, do you have advanced directives and paperwork? So we're gonna start talking about gathering information, what you need to gather and why. And then another step is just keep it organized because things change and you just need to be able to put your hands on some information and resources quickly. So if it's organized, and I'm going to show you a way to organize things. And we're going to talk about getting organized through this series of webinars of one, what you need to organize, but then kind of how you need to do that. But it's important to just kind of keep it all in one place so that you can access it. And then finally, this isn't the last step. This is something you need to be doing all throughout your caregiving journey, which is self-care, caring for the caregiver. It can be very overwhelming. It can be very stressful. It can be very time-consuming. And we'll tend to put ourselves on the back burner and not do what we need to do to kind of to take care of ourselves. And so learning how to incorporate self-care in your caregiving journey is just really, really, really essential. So we have covered, let's see if we've covered all the steps. Just to review, we come back to, we find this on caregivers, let's see, Caregiver School, which is at caregiversschool.com. And then you go to the student page, and that brings you to this where all the lessons are. Again, this is the place to print any of the worksheets that you might need. And you can listen to the lessons here, but it is actually better to listen to them on the podcast because it's just much more portable and it's more convenient. So you want to print out the worksheet and then listen so you can be taking some notes. All right. The other way to stay connected is through, I have a Facebook page. Some of you have come through that Facebook page, but it's Sojourner Caregivers School. Okay. And this is the Facebook page. And many of you found the webinar through this. All right. And let me see, what else do we need to make sure the goal of this lesson was to make sure you knew how to find the information that you need. And then back here and on this, you can come here to the home page and it tells you how to reach out to me. And my website, my email is pat@patthorn.com. And I can, and I'm available to help if you get stuck with some things. So, but that's, so that's Caregiver School and the podcast. And now you're gonna figure out what journey you're on and what role you're playing, and start working on working through some of these steps. The next webinar we're gonna start working on Gather, and we're gonna focus on advanced directives. So we're going to talk about what they are and why you need them. And I'm going to walk you through how you can get some of the websites and the resources that are available that you can do. There's some you can do for free by yourself, and others you need an attorney to help. And so we'll talk more about that in our next webinar. So let me open it up. Does anybody have any questions? Did this make any sense? Did I confuse you? Is there something that you didn't understand, or anything? Hey, Noelle, look, let me see. Oh. Hold on, I can't hear you. Hold on, let me figure out how to turn your microphone back on. So Noelle, if you turn on your microphone, then I should be able to hear you.
Okay, hear me now?
I can.
Good. Okay. Yeah, you needed to give me access to do that. And in any case, could you go over make a plan because I don't remember uh, what you said about that. Step
Okay,
3.
I will. Yep, I will do that. Let me put you back on mute. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about the let's see, is this the right one? The 6 steps to making a plan. So um basically what making a plan is, you know, so I always like to, we'll go more into this in another webinar, but generally you want to have a plan A, plan B, and a plan C. And plan A is what's working right now. And that's just, mom is home, or this is what's working. And plan B would be the next um iteration. What's the next natural progression? If this progresses, so my family that's working with the mom has the congestive heart failure. She's been fine at home, going to the doctor, taking her medications, um, you know, changing her lifestyle a little bit to accommodate it. But now she's having falls, and she's getting more out of breath. Now we have to have an oxygen machine in the house, and so that suddenly things are changing, and we're having conversations about, well, how long can we stay here? Well, dad's here and everything's fine. But if this gets worse, what would we have to do? And then C is a crisis plan. And actually, Noelle, I am so glad you brought this up, because really what we need to talk about is, what do you do if you suddenly have a devastating diagnosis? If all of a sudden you are standing, mom was fine, and now we're standing at a hospital bed, and we've got to figure out, oh, she can't go home, and now I'm looking for a nursing home, right? So I do cover that in Caregiver School with, it's called, come down here. When you receive a devastating diagnosis. And these steps are very different because of just the immediacy of things, that it forces you to kind of look at things a little differently. And the first part would be to make sure, and this is for everyone, but especially, is that you really understand the diagnosis. What does that mean? What's the disease progression? What 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 impact would that have on your loved one's current ability to function? And what do you need to be putting in place? And then you really need, and this is especially important if the diagnosis has any potential for cognitive impairment, again, a dementia, is because you've got to make sure you've got things in place while that person is compos mentis, which, because which is of sound mind, which is a legal term. Once someone is suddenly non-compos mentis, not of sound mind, they can't sign, they can't authorize things. And it creates a world of difficulty for a family caregiver that suddenly needs to step in and, I can't get dad's bank account because, I'm not, because I don't have authority. I can't. And I can't get power of attorney because he is not capable. No attorney will authorize, because he's not able to make that decision. So it does really complicate things. But these are all things we want to make sure we have in place. And this is the things we'll be talking about in the next seminars. Is we're going to talk about the advanced directives will be the next one, and then we'll talk about gathering the medical and disability paperwork. But these are things you just want to make sure you understand. What's medical coverage? What are they going to pay for? Who's going to pay for it? Again, once you know what care is needed, then who's going to pay for it? And then the next would be, who has the authority, which is what advanced directives, will I have the authority to do what I need to do and make those decisions? And then life insurance and long-term care policies are, again, come back to ways that pay for care. Okay. And then we'll talk, you've got to get your financial planning in place more quickly, and end of life planning. Um, and again, we're going to talk more about all these things in each of these webinars. We'll go into each of these topics into a little bit more detail. All right. But, basically, here's the plan B. Plan A is what's working. And so here are some of the things, Noelle, that you were saying that here, who will take care of you? What will they have to give up? Their time, their job, their home? I know and these are questions for the person that's being cared for. Are you asking them too much? And where will you live? And these are the questions again, if you're caring for someone that's involved in these decisions, you're asking them these questions. But if you are making these decisions, it's, who will take care of them? Where will they live? Right? Who will pay for it? And, people have complicated I live in a very rural area, and there are people that have farms, and property. Who's going to take care of the chickens and the cows? I mean, these are real issues, right? And plan C is just the crisis plan. It's like, what happens, if you have to go into a nursing home, do you know anything about it and where they are? Okay. And so this is under the sort of the steps that you would take if you or tasks if you have more of a devastating diagnosis where it's a little bit more accelerated and further along on the plan. So, all right. So there is the six tasks if you're on a planned route, and then more of the expedited plan. So does that help? All right. And so, all right. Well, that's all I had for today as far as information, but I am going to end with probably the most important part of being a family caregiver, and that is self-care. And so I have here, where did I go? Let's come back to Caregiver School, to the caregiver page. And so before we end, does anybody else have any other questions or anything? For those of you live, once we stop the recording, we can go into a little bit more in depth. But if there's no, if I've covered, if I haven't confused you, just if there's something I missed, we'll take care of that now. So, but otherwise, let's do this. So I call these rest stops. So what I want you to do is we're just going to sit and we're just going to listen. One of the most important ways that you can care for a loved one is to yourself. And that can be as simple and as easy as taking a minute to stop, listen, and breathe. I call these rest stops. So take a minute right now and sit with me and listen to the sounds of the rain. Close your eyes, listen, and breathe just for a minute. Now take a deep breath and open your eyes. A minute isn't very long,
but it can bring a sense of calm to a very busy day. So be sure you take some time every day to stop, listen, and breathe, just for a minute.
Well, I hope you found today's webinar helpful, and I'm gonna just and I look forward to seeing you the next time. So until then, take care.